helps me process what I wanted to share today. It gives you something to look at other than me. So, yeah, like Roger said, we've been here for about 15 years, actually, which is a long time. But we've been back and forth a lot. And I just wanted to start with this quote. This has recently become a very impactful quote in my life, and I really appreciate it. So, and then before I start, I actually found this as I was making my PowerPoint. Look at this. Oh, ta-da! That was like a long time ago. That was like when Jada was a little baby. There we go. There's some familiar faces in there. Anyways, so this is us. My husband Brad and I have been going to Uptown for quite a while. We are approaching our 13-year anniversary this year. Our daughter Keisha is 7, and we have 2 sons. Micah is almost 5, and Luca is 3.5. I was hoping to have this opportunity to share about God's been happening in our life for the last couple of months, and then when Roger asked me to speak on Mother's Day, I was like, okay, great. I'm like, oh, how am I going to fill so much time to talk about this snippet of moment in our lives? But hopefully it'll go okay. Sorry, I shouldn't go off my notes. So what I wanted to say, what I wanted to express with you this morning, the main point is that God is so faithful to us. And God shows himself to be faithful, and he's shown himself to be faithful to us. And maybe some of you can relate to that, and you can find new hope in some kind of endurance that you may be going through right now. If you're waiting on something in your life, maybe you will find hope in our story. And if you can't necessarily relate to this story, then I hope that you'll be encouraged in your faith journey, and that you will see that without a doubt that God is a faithful God. So this is a bit of a different Uptown Mother's Day story, because usually moms come up here and they often talk about being a mom, but I'm just going to be a mother sharing her story. That's kind of the way that I'm doing this. And this is a verse I wanted to share with you. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, and neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And don't mistake God's patience for his absence. His timing is perfect, and his presence is constant. He is always with you. So I have a short video to play for you. It's about 5 minutes long, and there aren't any words. It's just mute sound, but it's a series of pictures. And I wanted to use that as my theme as I shared my story this morning. So just enjoy it. Some of you may have seen it before, some of you haven't, but it helps me make my point this morning. So, go ahead. be appropriate for today because one of the points that I want to highlight is the fact that we have very limited vision, and we can only see what's right in front of us and what's happened in the past, but we can't see the entire picture like God does. But slowly the pieces of the puzzle start coming together, and we start to see a little bit more of the big picture. And start to understand how through our entire lives, God has been there through each decision, each experience, good and bad, gently preparing us for what he has in store for us. God's perspective is far greater than ours. The other point that I want to highlight is that God is faithful. He is a faithful God, and that even though at times it doesn't feel like or seem like he's with us, especially if we're going through a difficult time and we're left asking, why me? Or if we're in a period of waiting, no matter what life journey we're on, God is always constant and he is always with us. So like Roger shared, this morning going to be sharing a little bit about the fact that my family and I are moving into Kenya. We're leaving in July, and I just want to highlight how God has been working in our lives to direct us to this point. He has used our gifts and our passions, our life experiences, and a pinch of insane circumstances to bring us to this point. I will also show how God's timing is perfect. We've been waiting for this moment for 15 years. When this opportunity first came up, this was the 5th opportunity or chance that we have had to go to Kenya. But the timing wasn't right for our lives until now. I'll be teaching at a Christian international school. It's called Roslyn Academy. Our kids will attend this school, and I have signed a 3-year contract. This is a big move for our family, and most people think that we would have planned something like this, like a move like this, very carefully and plan the timing of it very carefully. But the reality is, from the time we found out about this job to the decision to move was only a span of about 3 weeks. I found out about the position on February 3rd of this past year, and I was offered the position on February 23rd. And when you hear that and don't know our entire story, it could seem as though we're absolutely crazy. And it even felt a little bit of like that to us. I just had to add Kramer just for fun. Yeah. Hopefully. Oh.
Or is it so possible that your head is spinning like a top? It can't be. Can it? Or is your entire world just crashing down all around you? That's enough.
So you couldn't really hear that well. And there was actually, we tried to, or do you think we should try it again? Let's try again. Let's just try again, because we want to see Kramer, right?
Impossible, is it? Or is it so possible that your head is spinning like a top? It can't be. Can it? Or is your entire world just crashing down all around you? All right, that's enough.
That made me want to watch all my Seinfeld shows all over again. But anyway, so that's kind of how we felt. I felt like our world was crashing out around us. We had just moved back to BC. We just came back in August. We had been in Winnipeg for 3 years. Brad just finished his master's degree, and we were very happy to be back here. We felt like this was where we needed to be. We were happy to be back at Uptown, happy to start getting involved again. So, and when this came out of the blue for us, it felt crazy, and it felt like what are we doing with our lives here? It was also very emotional, and it was a very hard decision. It actually breaks our hearts to leave. Ooh. But we can confidently say that we feel like God has orchestrated this, and it feels like God is moving mountains to make this happen for us. I hope that as I share the details with you, that you'll be able to see how God has his hand in all of this. And so to the beginning and back to the first page of this book, it's going to feel a little bit of it like a history of Stacy lesson. But like I've already mentioned, I'm doing this to highlight the fact that God is always working in our lives to bring us to the places that we're meant to be. And seemingly insignificant events are all pieces to this big puzzle that is our life. And as we get closer to seeing our lives from God's perspective each and every day, I'm going to use the pages of the book just as a visual. Each event has led us closer to God's direction. I'm going to start with my dad. I could go all the way back to my birth, but I won't bore you with those details. He loved the idea of working overseas, and when I was going into grade 8, we moved to Lesotho for 2 years. For those of you who don't know where Lesotho is, it's a country in Africa that's completely surrounded by South Africa, but independent of it. This was my first African experience. I absolutely loved living in Lesotho. I attended an international school and met many people from all over the world, many of them who I'm still in touch with. I had no idea at the time that I would be so passionate about returning to Africa. I didn't leave Lesotho with a hope to go back. When I left, I was sad about leaving, but happy that I had experienced it. And that was about it, and life moved on. But, of course, God kept moving in my life. Many years went by. I graduated high school and completed my first year of university. My dad got a job working overseas again, this time in Singapore. I had the choice to stay in Canada or to go with them, but I decided to go with them because at this point I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, so I took the opportunity to go. God was really reaching out to me in Singapore. It was at this point in my life that I started exploring who God was. My family hadn't attended church for a long time, but I had some friends in my life who were Christians, and they were teaching me about who Jesus was in their life. And I decided that I wanted to figure this out for myself. I read the entire Bible when I was in Singapore that year. My heart was ready, and God became real to me. While I was in Singapore, without any plan of my own, I ended up being a TA at the Canadian International School. The opportunity to be a TA at that school came completely out of the blue. Surprise, surprise. And it was seemingly insignificant, other than the fact that I was earning some extra money and it was filling my days. At the end of the school year, it was apparent to me how significant working there was, because after I finished that year, I decided to become a teacher myself. This was not something that I would have thought of doing in my life before this, but after that experience at that school, I decided to transfer to the Department of Education when I went back to Canada. Once I returned from Singapore, I got involved with a young adults group, and it was there that I met one of my best friends, Kirsten. This is before selfies were popular. The significance of meeting my friend Kirsten is that she is our contact in Kenya. We both graduated from university with our Bachelor's of Education degree. She went off to teach in Kenya, and I came out here to BC. At the time of this picture, Kirsten had just returned to Canada after teaching in Kenya for a few years, and I was about to head back to teach here again. She was about to return to teach with her, this time with her husband, Phil. This was the first opportunity that we had to go. There was a position that I could have applied for at the school, but Brad and I were married, and he was in the middle of his first master's degree, so we couldn't leave at that point. But as soon as Brad was finished his master's degree, we decided we were ready to head out into the world. There had been an opportunity, if there had been an opportunity at this point to head to Roslyn, we would have taken it, but there wasn't one at this time. So after much consideration, we decided to go to Uganda. I know that the time that I spent in Lesotho as a teenager brought me back to Africa. We could have gone anywhere, but that little seed that God had planted when I lived there was growing into a small plant. And both of us were excited to go live in Uganda for that year. This was Brad's first time in Africa, and I know that he grew to love it as much as I do. Since we were in Uganda, which is next door to Kenya, we had an opportunity to visit Kirsten and her husband Phil in Kenya. This is Kirsten and Phil at the Giraffe Sanctuary in Nairobi. Our kids can't wait to go there. Here, Kirsten is pregnant with her first child. She now has 3 daughters, and they were all born in Nairobi. It was so wonderful to connect with her, and it was then that we were shown around the campus at Roslyn, the school where Kirsten and Phil are working, and the school where I'll be working next year. And God continued to work on our hearts. I had already dreamed about living and working in Nairobi with Kirsten, but after visiting the school in person and walking around the campus, I knew without a doubt that we wanted that to be a part of our lives. It was this visit where the second opportunity to work at Roslyn came up. There was a position that I could have applied for, but Brad and I had just finished a year in Uganda. We wanted to come home and start a family, and at this point we weren't ready to start that in Kenya, so we came back. Fast forward a few years, Now this is going to go really fast with all of our kids. Fast forward a few years, we were blessed with our daughter, Keisha. We were experiencing the great joy that comes with being parents. At the same time, we were also walking through one of the hardest things we had ever experienced. My dad was sick with cancer, and we were living through the roller coaster of that journey. All the ups and downs, all the questions that come with having a loved one be sick. It was during this time that the third opportunity presented us to apply to go to a position in Kenya, but because of our family circumstances, we had to decline. Fast forward another year. It's like we're popping out kids. Fast forward another year, and we were blessed with our second child, Micah. Again, a season of joy mixed with sorrow because my dad passed away when Micah was 6 weeks old. Fast forward another year and a bit, and we moved to Winnipeg so that Brad could take his master's of degree in social work. And we had our third child, Luca. We were so thankful for his life and the joy that he brought to us. While we were in Winnipeg, we entered into one of the hardest seasons I've had to live through. We now had 3 kids. Brad was working, and I was going to school, and we were absolutely maxed out. Even though we had so much to be thankful for, I hit my lowest point. I felt like one thing after another was hitting us and pushing us down, and it left me wondering if and when we'd ever get out. Our marriage was suffering. We didn't have very much support. I was filled with so much grief, and on top of it all, we were so exhausted. It seemed as though one thing was bringing us down after another until we saw a glimmer of hope when we were presented with our 4th opportunity to apply for a position at Roslyn. This time it was for Brad to work at the school. The job would make use of both of Brad's specialties, which seemed to fit so perfectly. We were so excited and really thought that Brad would get the position. We were setting our hearts to go there. But when we found out Brad didn't get the position, we were so disappointed and confused about why we had to go through all of that. Since we were having such a rough time in Winnipeg, we wanted to come back to BC and be closer to Brad's family again. And after hearing that we weren't moving to Kenya, we decided to come back to BC. And that brings us back to this past year. We moved back to BC with hopes to settle back into life here, and it took us a while, but it slowly started to feel like home again. We were so thankful to come back to Uptown, and we were very excited to be part of the vision that Uptown has. We were reconnecting with great friends and able to be part of their lives again. Brad and I were able to get the support we so desperately needed so that we can begin to heal our relationship. Something that wasn't possible in Winnipeg. And it's been so wonderful to be close to Brad's family again, to reconnect with them and to see them so often. On the surface, we looked so happy, but every once in a while we'd ask the question, shouldn't have looked up. Every once in a while we ask the question, where should we live? Where do we want to put down roots? We were happy, but it also felt like something wasn't right. We didn't know what change we needed to make to stop those feelings of unrest. Many nights were spent talking over where we should live. At one point, we even contemplated going back to Winnipeg. I started to feel guilty that I was so unsettled. We have so much to be thankful for. Why couldn't I just be content and stop looking for the next thing? What was wrong with me that I couldn't just be happy where I was? And then, in January, Roger encouraged us to pray the Lord's Prayer every day. And as I started praying this prayer daily, I began to look at one particular part in a new light, and I started to feel more at peace about our circumstances. Often when I prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread," I would think of food or money or physical things. But God was moving on my heart, and I started to think of that part as also providing peace for our daily bread. Not to worry so much about where we should be. God would provide that answer for us. I know it sounds so strange, but every day that I prayed that prayer, I would pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." And in my heart, I was trusting more and more that God would give us the direction that we needed, so I didn't have to worry about it. And it was amazing at how more at peace I felt about everything. And I was able to have rest in that, having faith, knowing that God would provide. A few weeks later, again pondering where we should be and praying through which way we should go, I remember sitting on the couch with Brad and asking him, does God ever really direct our lives? Like, does he actually just show us exactly where we should go? Or is it more like, are we just trying to live in line with God's will and like in relationship with him, and then he'll show us the way? And we kind of just go back and forth in that. And like, I don't know, I think it's a bit of both. But I remember asking that question out loud. And then this is where things start to get a little bit crazy and start falling into place very fast. As we were pondering this, a thought came into my head, oh, maybe we should go overseas again. But it came in, I dismissed it, didn't think anything of it. A few days later, I was spending time with a friend that I hadn't seen for a long time, and I was explaining our dilemma, and she said, what about Africa? Do you guys want to go back there? And that was the first person in this entire year who had said that to me. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should check the website to see if there's a position. So when I looked at the website later that day, there was a position available, but this is January now. This is the end of January, and we know, because we've been through this a few times, that they usually post a position in November, they do interviews in January, and they're hiring already in February. So often the stuff that's on the website is outdated. So I emailed my friend and I asked her if it was still available. But of course it wasn't. But she basically, what happened was, let me see. Oh yeah, that was supposed to be a video of a door closing. Because again, it was another door closing. There was this opportunity. I emailed her and she said, sorry, it's not available. They've already filled the position. And she also added that she was very sorry because she knew about the position in November, but she didn't talk to us about it. She just kind of thought, oh, you moved back to BC. You're happy to be back there. You're back into your lives. She's not interested in this. But the interesting thing is that if she had approached me in November, I would have said that. I would have said, no way. We just got back. We need to be here. This is good for us. So it's just interesting how God knew that about our situation. So we assumed that it was, again, another opportunity that wasn't good for us right now, the fifth opportunity. But meanwhile, back in Nairobi, my girlfriend, Kirsten, was at the same house as someone on the hiring committee, and she said, oh, Stacy would have applied, it's too bad. And they were like, oh, too bad, maybe next time kind of thing. But then a couple days later, I received an email from Kirsten saying, hey, can I call you? And never once ever in 15 years of her living there and me being in Canada have I ever talked to her on the phone in Kenya. So I knew that something was up. That was February 4th or 3rd. Now I think I said the wrong date earlier. Anyways, she told me this never happens. People never decline, but the person they offered the position to declined, and they wanted to know if I would apply for the position. And then I started... I think Abby's the first person I told about this, and this is her reaction. Yeah. And see how I ignored her the whole day? Because I was losing my mind that day. And then there was a worship night, and I was crying. Roger punched me. But anyways, I love this. So insane. I'll pray, but don't leave me. So... we found ourselves facing another decision. What an emotional day that was. We felt that the decision to apply wasn't just a decision to apply. It was more like a decision of whether or not we would go. I prayed a lot that day. I cried a lot. And in the end, we decided that I would apply. I worked on the very lengthy application and for the next few days, and then I emailed it Sunday night, 4 days after hearing about the job. On Monday, I had an email asking for an interview on Wednesday. I had the interview on Wednesday, February 11th, 1 week after hearing about the job. It seemed to go well. They told me they had a few other people to interview, and they'd let me know in a week. Again, we found ourselves waiting, and time seemed to pass so very slow. And so what do you do when you have a big decision to make? You make a pro and con list. But it's tricky doing this because when you're putting the things on pros and cons lists, like not everything's weighted evenly. You have things that are weighted so much heavily than the other ones. So we were kind of, it didn't really help. It didn't really get us anywhere. And it was such a strange experience. It was the most bizarre experience we've ever been through because one day we were so ready to go, like, yes, 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 this is for sure where we need to go. And the next day we were like, no, what are we doing? Why are we even considering this? This is absolutely insane. And then the next day we'd be yes, the next day would be no. It wasn't really super clear to us during that waiting period what we should do right away. And then the next piece to this puzzle came completely out of the blue to us. As we were waiting to hear if they would offer me the position or not, Brad came home early one day and let me know that he was let go of his position. Now, there are a number of reasons why this is totally insane, and I won't go into the details of how all of that happened, but this came completely out of the blue for us. Brad loved his job, and he was great at it. And the fact that he loved his job was actually one of the reasons we were considering saying no to go to Kenya. This loss came with no warnings. They simply said that he was being let go without cause. They gave him a severance package, and they said that he did a fantastic job. They loved how he worked, and they would happily give him a reference. It was so strange, so confusing, and so hurtful. We didn't know why this happened at the time, but we soon came to see God's hand even in this difficult situation. Of course, while all of this is happening, guess what Roger's talking about? You guessed it, God's plan for our lives, and how they're usually bigger than what we can ever dream of ourselves, and that if you find yourselves in a situation where you're cornered by your circumstances, you might want to consider God's hand in all that. And this is his actual quote from what he was saying, that this is on the Sunday, so Brad lost his job Friday, this is Sunday. And he said, do you sometimes feel cornered by your circumstances? Maybe that's God corralling you and moving you to where you wouldn't go if it wasn't for that. And what I'm challenging you to do is to start to try to see the hand of God in all of these things, even though they weren't what you had expected and they weren't what you wanted. So I was actually teaching Sunday school that weekend, and Brad's like, you got to listen to Roger's message. It's like exactly what we're going through. So that was pretty significant timing for us to hear that. I emailed Kirsten, Monday. So then the Monday, I had an email in my inbox saying that I had gotten the job. Just a couple days after Brad had lost his job. I emailed Kirsten letting her know that I had the job offer, and her reply was another testament of how God is moving and working. She had said that on Friday in Nairobi, the same day that Brad was fired, she had heard that even though they appreciated me and loved my interview, they couldn't afford to bring a family out to Nairobi. So she was expecting to hear back from me this week saying that I didn't get the job again. So something changed that weekend that led them to change their minds. We found ourselves going over everything that I had shared with you today, all of the ways that God has worked in our lives up into this moment, how he faithfully has prepared us and clearly orchestrated the events that led us to this point. All the little details were sorted out. Everything fell into place. Everything was leading us to go. Of course, now that we've made the decision, I've had many days and many moments where I ask myself, what are we doing? I get flooded with doubt quite often. We just got back. Why would we move again? Brad just finished his degree. Why would we take him away from opportunities he has to establish his career here? We love Uptown. We love our friends. We love our family. Canada's an amazing country to live in. People leave their countries to come to Canada. Why are we leaving Canada? What if we're seriously messing up our kids' lives? Why are we taking them away from all their support? This decision holds so much more weight to it now that we have kids and affects them, not only us. But I need to constantly hold on to the truth that God is a faithful God. It has been 15 years since God first placed it on our hearts to go to Kenya. 15 years is a long time. And I hope that can be an encouragement to some of you if you're in a season of waiting right now. It may not look the way you first thought it would. It may take longer than you had hoped. But God is faithful no matter what. I hold tight to this truth when I'm filled with doubt. He has brought us to this point, and He will see us through it. I'm reminded again of my limited vision. Even after making this decision, God continues to be faithful, going ahead of us and sorting out some of the big things for us, helping things fall right into place. We were worried about breaking our contract with our landlord, but he was able to find someone pretty much immediately after we told him. And one of the biggest challenges when we go to Africa is to find a vehicle. And we already have secured a vehicle from a reliable person, and even Kirsten is so surprised at how well and how easily this is all going for us. And God's been so faithful taking care of us right now because Brad lost his job, and I have been working. I've been subbing more often. And there are so many layers to why this is good in our lives right now, because I'll be going back to be a full-time teacher. Brad's going to be at home with the kids. And it's really good for us to have this opportunity in Canada where we have our supports right now to get used to this transition. And I actually thought that I would never, ever teach ever again. I probably even up to January, I had the opinion that I never wanted to teach again. And God has totally blown that out of the water and provided this opportunity. And I'm actually really loving being in the school again and loving teaching again. So, yeah, so that's pretty interesting how that's all happening. Being fairly confident that God's moved mountains to lead us to this moment doesn't take away the fact that there are a lot of sacrifices to this move. I knew I was going to cry on this one. We are giving up a lot. Just because we're excited to go doesn't mean that we aren't sad to leave. It pains us to leave. We are so very excited to be back here. We will miss all of the birthdays and celebrations and living life with our friends and family, and we will miss Canada. I've been an emotional wreck trying to sell almost all of our things. We're liquidating everything, and there's grief going through that process. Saying goodbye to things that are important to us, selling things that have value to us and we wouldn't be selling if we weren't moving. It hurts, and I know it's part of the grieving process. And it will even be more painful when we have to get to the point of saying goodbye to the people in our lives. We don't want to say goodbye again, and that time will come much too soon. But I know that out of death comes new life, and I keep coming back to these truths. God is faithful. God is with us. God's timing is perfect. And even though we are grieving a lot as we prepare to move, we're also excited about the new things that we will experience. I'm hopeful for the new life it will bring for our family. I'm thankful that our kids will go to an amazing school. And I'm thankful for the slower pace of life that we'll be living and the community that we'll be a part of. And I'll finally be able to live close to one of my best friends again. We're excited to travel and see more of the world than we would have been able to see having been here. And we're excited to give our kids the opportunity to broaden their worldview. There are so many wonderful things to look forward to and be thankful for. So, I know this isn't biblical, but it's been part of how we're working through this big change. When we start having our doubts about this choice, it's much easier to look at how we would feel if we weren't going. And we find ourselves thinking, if we didn't go, we would just regret it for the rest of our lives. So God is continuing to work in our lives. I have no idea what the rest of our life will hold. I don't even know what this will mean for our kids and their future. We don't know what God has planned for Brad, what he'll do over there, but we know that we are getting closer and closer to seeing our life from his perspective, broadening our vision and catching glimpses of the life from his point of view, and having the patience to follow his lead and his timing. And then I just wanted to end with this verse. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Thank you for listening. I want to just pray a blessing on you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. with a couple songs.
Your love is raise our hands out to Brad and Stacy and to their 3 children, and we're going to pray a blessing upon them. And anyone around them can go and lay hands on the family. We'll do this again before you leave. But so God, we come before you as a body of your